Well, hey there, everybody. It's Snackbox. I'm super excited to be here. We are here today talking about all sorts of stuff, ranging from, we're going to talk a little bit about trail days, town days. We're going to talk a little bit about transportation. We're going to talk about resupply, the whole kit and caboodle. We've got a lot of stuff that we are going to be working through today. So I'm really excited to be here with you all. If you have questions as we go through this, please do put those in the comments. Ultimately, here, one of the things that I want us to really think about is the idea that when we're on the Colorado Trail, this is really an opportunity for us to develop our problem solving skills, and the community is really fantastic. So we are in a great spot going into this to think about ways that we can make sure that our adventure is really great, but also don't worry if you don't have absolutely everything figured out. In fact, one of the things that can be a real calming force for you as you're planning your Colorado Trail Thru Hike is to know that most people run into different problems or different things, and they figure it out on the trail, and no set of planning is going to be absolutely perfect. So really excited that you're all here. Really excited to see Kevin over there. Hi, Kevin. It's good to see another Illinoisan. I guess I'm an Illinoisan at present. Let's go ahead and start talking, though. We've got so much stuff that we want to cover. Let's talk first here about the idea of transportation. And this is one of those things that brings a lot of people quite a bit of anxiety. Just going back and kind of anecdotally, one of the things that I know is that one of my top videos on my channel was the one about the hitchless resupply. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the ways that you can use the shuttlers list, especially if you're a planner, to make sure that you're in a great spot to be successful on your thru hike. And here's what it is. Let's talk first about just basic bare bones. What is the shuttlers list and how do you use it? The shuttlers list is run and sort of coordinated by the Colorado Trail Foundation. So when you go to the CTF website, what you want to search for is just shuttlers list and trail angels. And they have a little box on the website and it will say, click here. When you click there, you add your email address and they will fire it right back over to you so that you have a list of anybody who has volunteered to be a trail angel or a shuttler. One of the things that's really important about that list is to really respect the list. This is a list composed of actual people's information. And so don't go firing it out to everybody. Make sure that you just hold on to it for yourself. Anybody can get it, but it's a big thing to make sure that you're not sort of sharing it around with everybody. So get yourself a copy of the shuttlers list, get one early so you get a sense of who's out there. You can start beginning the planning and processing of getting in touch with folks and seeing who's shuttling that year, and if somebody's maybe not shuttling that year. So you can start reaching out to them for sure. But before you take off on your Colorado Trail adventure, I would resubmit my email and get a new updated version of the shuttlers list, especially if I'm concerned about how I'm going to get to and from town. One of the things that you're going to know about me is that, I'm pretty comfortable hitching, but many people are not necessarily comfortable hitching. And so if you listen to, for instance, Backpacker Radio's episode with Rolf there, who's in the chat. Hi, Rolf. It's great to see you there. What you're going to know is that there are people who are really comfortable with it and then people who aren't. And that shuttlers list is a great way to know, exactly whose car you're getting in, and you have a record. You can share it with nervous parents. Say you're a younger person, you can say this is the person who's going to be picking people up. And one of the things too that we're going to talk about here is some of the ways that you can get to and from the trail. So I see Kevin there. Kevin asked about how to get from Salida back to Denver. That's a great question for those of you who are concerned about some of these bigger towns. And even Rolf, I know he is heading out to do the collegiate loop. And one of the great things about Colorado is the Bustang system, which is a bus system called Bustang, and they will take you to and from the major cities. So Kevin, one of the things that you'll be able to do there is go into Salida and get the Bustang back to town. And it's pretty inexpensive. I want to say it's south of $20 for that trip. And so that's the way that I would get back from Salida, especially if you don't have somebody who can come get you. The same holds true if you're trying to get to the collegiate loop. You can make it to Buena Vista on the Bustang, and that trip I think is maybe $15 at most. So check out the Bustang website. That's a really good one for you. And there, check out that we've got Robert on Trail is here with us. Robert, I've been waiting for you here. I've got a question for you, my friend. What do you what does a nosy pepper do? It gets jalapeno business, my friend. There we go. Dad jokes are flying. So let's talk a little more about this Shuttlers list. The Shuttlers list is also a list of trail angels, but one of the things that's really important is for you to talk with them beforehand before they pick you up to coordinate times, and to also make sure that if they're expecting any money from you, that you've figured out what the cost is going to be and how you can pay them. And that's a really important thing. A lot of people are really willing to be trail angels, and that's a little different than the Shuttlers, but the list is going to have both of them. So you want to talk with those people about both of those things, especially if you're working on a budget. Now, hitching and safety, this is one of those things. You can do the trail. Let me pause here before we go any farther. You can absolutely do the trail without hitching anywhere. You can do all the food resupply that you need. You can make sure that you have that in tow, and you can do this and make the whole way down the trail without hitching at all. It is a little more challenging, but if you are going to hitch, please make sure that you feel comfortable and safe, and make sure that you are being careful for cars next to the road, that kind of thing. I recommend, particularly if you're a younger person or if you're not necessarily feeling safe, hitch with people. That's a really great way to go. But the key here is just use some common sense, have your wits about you. And ultimately, here's the other piece: almost everywhere that you get along the trail, there's going to be a nearby option for you. So you don't necessarily have to hitch. If you say go to Buena Vista, it's 6 miles from the east side of the park, or east side of the trail rather. So you could walk that if need be, right? And so if you're not comfortable, or if your family's not comfortable supporting your hitching, etc., then by all means, you can definitely walk into a lot of these places. Leadville's 9 miles. I mean, you're walking 500 miles. So if you don't feel comfortable with hitching, you can do that. But you can also coordinate with the Trail Angels, Shuttlers, that kind of thing. The tough part about coordinating with shuttlers is that it often needs to be done in advance. And anytime you're trying to time something in the mountains, that will become a little more complicated, but it can be done. If you are trying to coordinate with those shuttlers, what I would also recommend is be really mindful of the places where you get high in elevation, because often that will be the only place in the segment where you will have access to cell phone service. So for example, a lot of different times you can actually get up in elevation, like Georgia Pass. Early in the trail, I was able to get cell phone service. So that's often something you can really do. I want to point out here a couple of different things. Yeah, so Mr. Gresham there pointed out that there are people who are really concerned about hitching, and so that's certainly a safety concern. Totally understandable. One thing that's going to be a theme for tonight is that we're going to talk a lot about the sort of the culture of the outdoors in Colorado, and it's kind of underlined and underscored a little bit there by Mad Hippie's Life. That's Miller and Deb. Pause for a minute. If you are setting out on the trail this year and you don't know about Mad Hippie's Life videos, these are the best videos for understanding what the trail looks like and how to approach it. So make your way over to Mad Hippie's Life. Make sure you check out their videos. They've got some really incredible footage, and it's really great. They also just did a video this week that talked about some things that you can be doing now to set yourself up for a really great through hike. So watch their channel. But also, one of the things to know that they point out is just talking to people can be really great. So talking to people on the trail, talking to folks when you're nearing the trailhead, sometimes what will happen, this happens pretty commonly actually, you'll be hiking and you'll pass some day hikers and you'll say, I'm just trying to get to Lake City or whatever it is. And then they'll be like, oh, well, let's get back and you can hop in my car. So it's not necessarily hitching, but it's something close to it. For what it's worth, in 2020 and 2021, I hitched quite a bit, and each time it didn't take me very long. So for those of you who are comfortable hitching, it's pretty easy. And keep in mind that both of those years were sort of peak pandemic. So if it's peak pandemic and people are still pulling over to give you rides, you can often rest assured that you will be likely to get that ride into town. And then also when you get to town, the harder part is often getting back to the trail. What a lot of people will do with this is they will take sort of their Tyvek ground sheet. If you use Tyvek or whatever it is, they'll take a sheet of maybe a handkerchief or a bandana, and they will write on it, hiker to town or hiker to trail. And then when you're hitching, you can hold that up, because one of the things culturally about the area is that if they know that you're a hiker and that you were just trying to get back out there will be people who will really be eager to help you out as a hiker, because most people in Colorado, or lots of people in Colorado, especially the spots where the trail goes, they will be really eager to help other hikers because they've been helped by hitchhiking in the past. So know that that's the case, and know that chances are good if you feel even remotely comfortable hitching, you're not going to have any trouble finding those rides. So that's one of the ways to kind of handle that transportation. It is worth knowing that you can often get, you can take the train from the airport in Denver all the way down to almost near the trailhead, and then you can either walk. I believe it's about 4 miles. I think Rolf, if you're here, I think you would know the answer to this. Could you put in the comments how far it would be from the last train station to Waterton Canyon? That would be really helpful, I think. But ultimately, you can get pretty close via the train system, or you can take an Uber. That will be an expensive Uber, but if you come into town, it will be pretty easy for you to at least get to the trailhead. So often some of these things can be worked out that way. When you get to Durango, this is one of the more common questions that I see through the Facebook groups. This one is much more challenging for folks to get from Durango back home. I've done this a number of different ways. What's worth knowing is you can either rent a car, you can take the Mustang. The Mustang trip will take a long time. I believe it's about 12 hours because you have to connect in the middle. So you can take the Mustang. You can fly, which is expensive. But there's a new option, and that's Frontier Airlines runs a shuttle from Durango to Denver. I believe it's 2 days a week, might be Tuesday and Thursday, might be even more frequent now, but it was about $40. So it was really reasonable. The tough part again is that you might not be able to take your trekking poles, or you're going to have to pay extra for it, but it's getting much easier for us to get back to Denver after a great thru hike. Same thing holds true though, is if you were talking to folks on the trail, you're going to build a tramily, talk to them. Cause a lot of times, say you have somebody you meet and you're hiking with them for 3 or 4 days, there's a good chance you're going to be in a group with somebody from Colorado who's likely heading back toward Denver, can get you a ride back there. And for many people, that's where you need to go for the next stop. Excuse me, everybody. I don't know what's going on. But basically the idea here is that talking to people will be really useful. It can be very tough for you to set a plan in place, especially if you're trying to time when you're going to get to Durango, because when you go through the San Juans, that last 70 miles from Silverton, the rainstorms do kick up pretty aggressively later in the season. And you can kind of have a hard time there, and it can really stress people out at the end of the trail if they're trying to get to Durango on time to catch a flight or something of the sort. So just weigh those options. Now, there are other ways to handle it, and you can often rent a car, for example. One way can be a little bit expensive, but that's certainly doable. But ultimately, my best tip for you is to be talking to people on the trail, because there are a lot of trail angels, and there are a lot of people who are willing to take you back somewhere where you can catch a bus or take you all the way back to Denver for a certain expense. Of course, that's going to be more expensive, but the Mustang is an affordable option, if nothing else. It's worth knowing that when you get to Durango, hotels can be pretty expensive certain times of the year. So I've had the hotels in Durango, some years I get there and it is like $100 a night, and some years I get to Durango and it's $250 a night. So it can be kind of hit or miss with that, but there is a campground in Durango that you can stay in, and that one is a pretty affordable option, and there's a free bus that'll take you through Durango. So if you end up in Durango and you don't have a lot of money, you can often stop there for the night, get a shower, get cleaned up, get a bus into town for some food, and then take that same bus to anywhere you need to go to catch your next ride out of there from there. And so pay attention there to the chat box. One of the things that I want you to remember is we're having these chats, is that the chat box is full of people who have hiked the trail and full of people who are really interested in helping out. So Rolf there said that there are shuttles, and he's even willing to help people from the light rail station over to Waterton Canyon. So be paying attention to that. And if you're in the Denver area, try to stop by at the end of the month for the meetup at Race's Brewing. I don't know if that's even a word, but starting to meet people, talking on the Facebook group, that's a really good way to kind of connect with some people, especially if you're thinking about going solo, which, pause for a minute. If you're thinking about going solo and you're nervous about it, go. Absolutely go. There are so many people on the trail. The community is great. That I've never hiked and camped alone a single night on the Colorado Trail unless I've wanted to. It's just the way it goes. It's a popular trail. People are very welcoming overall, especially as you move through the trail. You will build a tramily, or you'll find people who are willing to check on you and make sure that you're doing okay. So just know that that's the case as you go through that. So Hitching and safety, I think we kind of covered that. But then remember that hitchless is possible. And so here's the structure for the next little bit. As we go through this, what I'm going to talk about is I'm going to go through all the trail towns that you're going to come across. And as we talk about them, I'm going to give you a sense of what you can expect, how hard it will be to get to those different trail towns, and then also which ones you can get to without hitching. And so if you're nervous about hitching, then this should be helpful for you. I don't want it to sort of drone on, but I do want us to cover some of that best information for those different trail towns. But as we go through, if you're interested, remember that hitchless is possible. And it's really easy, generally speaking, especially early in the hike. Other thing to know about this is that getting that data book and getting the guidebook from the Colorado Trail Foundation is absolutely clutch. It will help you to figure out exactly where you can stop, where you can get food, how far things are going. So that Colorado Trail Foundation website is just really, really terrific. And then also I want to point out there that Mad Hippie's Life pointed out that talking to the folks in town at the hostels is really, really helpful. In fact, I saw a video just today where some folks went to the Butterfly House, and just talking to the owners of the Butterfly House, they were able to get a hitch into Salida to go get some resupply. So there are a lot of those options available. Melinda, we can talk a little bit about the cleats or no cleats. I think segment 6 in mid-June, it depends a lot of things. Mid-June is going to be really tough, but if you notice there, Girl Plus Dog Adventures did that segment about that time and had some post-holing concerns. So I think that advice there to have micro spikes is good feedback. But also follow the Facebook group if you're on Facebook, because they have the Tuesday snowpack report will come out every Tuesday starting in about late April, and that will tell you what each section is looking like. So it's a really good one for you to kind of get a sense of. Now, before we go any farther into these towns, I will talk to you about places where you can send resupply and sort of the philosophy of it. But one thing that I want you to know here is that even though you're going out into the wilderness, every time you stop in towns, you're going to be in a place where people actually live. What that means is you can go to grocery stores. There are grocery stores all up and down the trail. You're going to have lots of good options. So personally, my personal take is I wouldn't do any resupplies. I wouldn't ship any of them forward, because you're going to end up spending a lot of extra money to send yourself stuff you could have bought for the same price or less than it would have cost to ship that food to towns where you're going to pick up the resupply box next to a store that sells half the stuff that's in your resupply box. With one caveat, of course, that if you have a specific dietary restriction, then resupply boxes make a lot more sense at that point, especially if you're vegan, for instance. That would be a really good option, or gluten sensitive or intolerant or celiac, whatever that is. So I think that there are some exceptions, but for the vast majority of people, you can get everything you need. And what I would do is instead of sending ahead resupply boxes, I would focus much more of my attention making sure that I know how to go to a grocery store and what types of things I'm looking for. And the other advantage of this is that if you do big resupply boxes, you tend to put the same food in each of the boxes. But if you go grocery shopping, you're going to tend to find much more variety, and you're going to get tired of food and not have to keep eating it for the rest of the month while you're out there. So we're going to talk about the groceries and the towns with good options, but ultimately here, think of those towns where there are bigger populations. So Breckenridge and Frisco have good grocery towns. Then you've got Leadville for sure has a grocery store. You've got Buena Vista has enough of a grocery store, although it's a little bit smaller. It's plenty to do a resupply. Salida for sure. Creed will have a little market. Lake City also has a market, and then Silverton for sure has a market. These are places where people live. So even though you're going to be spending your nights out in the wilderness, you won't necessarily be so far remote that you're not going to see civilization or cell phone service. So personally, I wouldn't send it ahead, and I have sent it ahead in the past, and I've ended up losing a lot of money as a result, especially because if I don't pick up all those boxes, or if I have too much food, that can be an issue. So let's get right into some of these trail towns. And remember, this sort of two-part. We're going to talk about the towns themselves, what I would use them for, and how we'd use them. And I want you all to comment below if you know these towns, what some of the advantages are. And then if you have questions about them, feel free to fire those over fire those over as well. Before we start on that one, let's talk J3 hikes, hammocks on the trail. Those can be good options if you're willing to cowboy camp. There is a section late in the trail where you're going to see 32 miles above tree line. And so you definitely are going to have times for cowboy camping. So hammocks are certainly an option, but they probably won't make it the whole way through. People have done it if they're willing to cowboy camp for a night or two, though. All right. So when you're making your way down the trail, the first town option you're going to come to there is the town of Conifer. And Conifer is it's accessible. It's about 17 miles down a dirt road from the South Platte River. So if you've been watching Colorado Trail videos, that's 17 miles from where you see the bridge. And so it's the first bridge. It's in everybody's video. It's a tougher one, but you're only 17 miles in. So Conifer is not necessarily a great town to stop in unless you're experiencing, say, dehydration or altitude sickness and you need to regroup. A lot of folks last year who started in early July had to bail out to Conifer for a night to get dry because there were some pretty heavy storms. Some people got stuck in some rain for quite a bit. So Conifer is a good town. It does have a Safeway there, so getting groceries is pretty easy. And this would be one where I probably wouldn't stop unless I was running into some dehydration issues. I don't believe there are many hotels or there's not much lodging to speak of. But if you are thinking about lodging, let's talk about, well, not yet. Sorry. Buffalo Creek here is it's the next town. It's about 3.5 miles from the firehouse at the end of segment 2. And Buffalo Creek is this one is really tricky because there's not much there. There's barely a store, certainly no lodging unless you've got, say, an Airbnb available. And then that Airbnb it would be really tough, but it's early enough in the trail. Here's what I would use Buffalo Creek for. It's at the end of segment 2 or it's 3 miles from a mile of the end of segment 2. So the firehouse that you see in the videos is not the end of segment 2. There's a mile sort of part of the trail that parallels that road, but basically it's at the end of segment 2. And so taking that trip over could be really good if you do segment 2 and it's the heat of the day and you're really zapped for energy and if you are having a hard time at that point. And so it's good for getting some cold drinks, getting rehydrated. It would also be good if you are taking your time getting acclimated to the trail, excuse me, which is a very good idea if you're not sure how you're going to do on the trail. And so when you're thinking about Buffalo Creek, that one is just good for people who are really slow or like me, the first year I went out there, or if you were having a hard time after the burn zone. So segment 2, notoriously difficult, really hot, really hard. It's the elevation gain and fall isn't great, but you're going to be hit by the sun all day long. So at the end of that segment, if you were having a hard time with dehydration, then that's the way to go. All right, so let's talk here about the next one. And this one's going to be a more important town. We're going to talk a little bit here about Bailey, Colorado. It's 8 miles from the end of segment 3. And this one is down a dirt road. So it's a little bit deceptive because it's actually not terribly hard to hitch from there because there are a lot of outdoors people who are making their way to different hikes and different trails. This one is, as the trail goes, it's close to about 40 miles into the trail, and there is a hostel there called the Linwood Hostel, and this one is a terrific option, especially if you're not sure about how you're going to do on the trail. I would certainly recommend it. I know that there were a couple of people, there's a trail angel that I know who hiked the trail a good bit. She had a very hard time adjusting to carrying the pack and the heat in segment 2. She took 3 or 4 days, and the folks there at the Linwood House are terrific. They took great care of her. So Bailey, Colorado would be a great one, especially if you want to start slower and a little more gradual into your trip. And so when you're starting that trip, know that Bailey is there and know that it's worth it. The tougher part of it, the tougher part about this trail, this stop is that it can often be either expensive or difficult to get back to the trail if you have to pair that if you have to try to get back with a shuttler. But it's worth it, especially if it saves your hike. So Bailey, Colorado, there is a little tiny shop there, so it would be possible as well. I see a couple of really good ones there. I want to point out there, Robert on trail, nailing it with the facial hair joke. That is You win. Thanks, Off Grid. I appreciate you saying that. And then Kate said, what's the most common first resupply stop? And this one is probably Breckenridge, Frisco area. We're going to get to that one really shortly because there are really only 2 more stops there, but it's about 104 miles in. And so a lot of people are able to do this in somewhere between 5 to 7 days. And that's pretty good amount of food to carry. As you're probably picking up, one of the things that I would recommend is if you are not sure of your physical conditioning at this point, stopping earlier, because that food weight, if you can pare it down, is really helpful. But for most hikers setting out on the trail, especially those people who've been pretty mindful about prepping and training and getting out there with packs and testing out their weight and dialing in their gear, Breckenridge Frisco is a great one, and there's some real advantages to those 2 stops, and they're the same stop basically. We'll talk about that in just a minute. But before we get there, quite literally, pun intended, I guess, I don't know. Jefferson and Fairplay, these are 4.5 and 20 miles from Kenosha Pass. They're south of Kenosha Pass. Very easy hitches because it's on US Highway 285, I believe. Somebody can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. And so as you go, when you get to Kenosha Pass, you're going to be on a giant paved US highway, so it's pretty easy to find people who are heading south. Jefferson just has basically a tiny little market. They do have a little diner area where you can get some food. And then Fairplay is quite a bit farther, 20 miles farther. But anybody who's going toward Jefferson or Fairplay, they're probably going to end up in if they're going to Jefferson or through Jefferson, they're going to end up in Fairplay most likely. That's a great stop if you need to rest up. They do have hotels, restaurants. They've got a cute little downtown. It's your classic Colorado small town. I think it's also the place where South Park is technically set. So if you're into South Park, the TV show, that's a good one. That one is a little bit more expensive, and it's much harder to get back to the trail, which, to Kate's question there, that one's a really tough one. That's a really tough one to get back to the trail because it's much easier to catch a hitch there. Kirk Herman, great question about the post office in Jefferson. I don't know if there's a post office in Jefferson. However, I do believe that you can send a resupply box to the market there. So the Jefferson town market will accept a resupply box. I watched a video just today where somebody was picking up their resupply there. So I believe that can be done, but if somebody knows better than that, please do correct me. Girl Plus Dog Adventures Details over there did point out that somebody did trail magic at the end of segment 5. This is a pretty common one, but there was one trail magic there that really hit a home run last year with some, I believe there was Fireball and Bailey's there, allegedly. That was a pretty decent one. So let's talk a little bit about Breckenridge and Frisco. This is, in my mind, this is a must stop. So it's one that just about everybody has to stop there. Now, the advantage is there are shuttles, so free buses run by the city of Jefferson, or not Jefferson, apologies, Breckenridge and Frisco. So if you stay on the side of the highway when you come down to the highway and you hop on a bus there, it will take you to Frisco. But if you go under the bridge and come out on the other side, there's a free bus that'll take you down to Breckenridge. There is a hostel in Breckenridge, and there are hotels everywhere. Hostel is the Bivy Hostel. I believe there might be another hostel there too. The Bivy Hostel is one of the nicest hostels I've ever stayed in, hands down. It's also impossible to get in touch with them on the phone. Do with that information what you will. But Breckenridge is a great little town to stop in, have a resupply, do some laundry. They've got a grocery store. Frisco, same story. Frisco is also a better stop for you if you need some gear. So if you need some type of gear, say your AirPad bursts like mine did one year, then you can go to Frisco and you're only a couple of miles away from an REI in Dillon. So it's a really great option for you to go to Frisco and hop in there. One thing that's also noteworthy about the stops in Breckenridge and Frisco and that free bus line, I think Robert on Trail can confirm this, but basically you can take that bus all the way around the mountains to Copper Mountain Resort. And the reason that's important is if you get 2 nights in a hotel in Breckenridge or Frisco, you can slack pack over the 10-mile range. And so when you climb over, basically what you can do is leave your heavy gear in the hotel, climb over the 10-mile range, and then when you get to Copper Mountain Resort, you can take the bus back stay in the hotel, grab your stuff, and then the next morning make your way back to Copper Mountain Resort. So you can slack pack over a pretty difficult part of the trail early there. It's a really good one to kind of do that. And then, as Rolf points out there, you do want to take a buff or a mask. They won't let you on the bus without them. And it's also just good practice when you're going out west to a new area, especially during a pandemic. You probably want to have a copy of your vaccination card, no telling what's going to happen in the years to come. And then there is as details from Girl Plus Dogs Adventures points out, there's a really great crate shop there in downtown. There are also some great breweries, some other things. So those are really terrific. Let's see, Billy Randall there. Has anyone used the Mustang as a way to either get home? That's a great question. Billy, I hope somebody answers that. I've not personally taken the Mustang, but I think I've heard people who have, and they've been pretty pleased with the Mustang service. So it's worked out pretty well. So we've already talked about this one. This is the Copper Mountain Resort. This one is, there is a little shop there. And so here's my tip, actually, my pro tip is that when you get to the Copper Mountain Resort, it's right on trail. It's right at the start of segment 8. And you can go and get a hot meal there. You can get cold beer there. You can get food, whatever. There's a little grocery store. So keep walking. Don't necessarily stop and just get a breakfast burrito. If you're kind of strapped for cash or you're trying to do this on a budget, they do have a really affordable little grocery store shop, and you can get some resupply stuff to top off. It's probably not good enough for a full resupply unless you're really in a pinch. But the Copper Mountain Resort certainly is a great place to stop. It's great to wait out the rain if there's a storm, because just from there, you're going to head up into Searle Pass and Kokomo Pass. And so this is a good spot to kind of time your passage over those areas, because they do head up above tree line. They're beautiful. Actually, they're my favorite part of the first 200 miles of the trail, probably. So Searle and Kokomo Pass are just absolutely breathtaking. In fact, the background here is coming down Searle Pass or Kokomo Pass. That's where, I mean, it's just breathtaking. Copper Mountain Resort also does have lodging available. So if you're going to do that slack packing option that I mentioned, where you're going to leave your stuff, you could do that at Copper Mountain Resort. And the advantage there is that the resort itself is not terribly expensive. It is expensive, to be sure, but you have to pay a resort fee. So if you stay for 2 nights, you only pay that fee once, whereas 1 night you pay it just that one time. So, and thank you, Charlotte, for leaving that number as well. So, Charlotte, you also bring up a great point in the chat there. If you're watching this, especially during the pandemic, and especially the smaller the towns, it's a really great idea to call ahead before you send a resupply. So there are a couple of places that we're going to talk about later where the policy seems to change almost every year. And so just confirming that they're going to accept those resupply boxes is a good idea. Know as well that kind of the theme here is you're going to be a problem solver, and you're going to have a community there to help you, most likely. And so if something happens and you don't get your resupply box, people figure it out. It happens to people, and it's just kind of one of those things. But if you are sending ahead resupply boxes, make sure you call each of the places just to confirm. And if you're setting up, say, a hostel is a great way to go. Any of the hostels we've mentioned, most of them will accept a resupply box. I know they will in the hostel in Leadville that we're going to talk about here in just a moment. They'll take them in Salida. There's a great spot for that. And then you can also send it ahead to Lucky at the Ravens Rest in Lake City. And if you're going to stay at a hotel and you're sure you can make it to that hotel on a certain night, you can by all means call them ahead, and they will likely take your resupply box as well. Now, Leadville, Colorado, this is one that is, this is a cool stop. Leadville is a cool town. There's a lot of stuff going on. It's a great one for a stop because there's a good hotel there, or a hostel rather, run by hikers. So it's a great one. There's a pizza place there. I believe it's called Cosmic Pizza or something sort of extraterrestrial, kind of otherworldly. It's a great little town. They do have a company there that claims to be green and still requires you to drive twice to their facility to buy those items. We're not going to mention them, but Leadville is a cool place. It does have a little grocery store. It is pretty easy to get a hitch in and out of Leadville. It's about 8 or 9 miles. And so that is a good stop for a lot of people, especially if you are, if you're starting to feel the grinds, right? So if it's starting to get exhausting, that can be a really tough spot. What I will say about Leadville as well, this one goes out to one of the questions that we had a little while ago, is that that if you are leaving Leadville, you want to make sure that you have your bug protection dialed in, because you're heading into the Holy Cross Wilderness. It is one of the only places on the trail that is very buggy. And so whatever you do to protect yourself from bugs, make sure at Leadville you are ready to go, because the next 30 or 40 miles around Mount Massive and through the Holy Cross Wilderness is very, very buggy. That can be a really tough one for a lot of people, especially because that mental game gets it's a really tough one if the bugs start biting, and especially if the rain hits and then you're struggling from there. Hitch from, we had a question there from Kirk Herman. Hitch from Leadville to Twin Lakes. That one is a little tougher because you have two roads, and it would probably be easier to hitch from Twin Lakes to Leadville than Leadville to Twin Lakes. Certainly can be done, and the cutoff over. So even if you just get a ride down to the cutoff at Twin Lakes, you should be able to walk that one pretty easily. Holy Mosquitoes Wilderness from the Mad Hippies. That's spot on. That it is. It's really, really tough. And then also Rolf brings up a good point. Kind of goes back to what I was saying, that you're in the woods, but you're not out of civilization necessarily. So credit cards are good, but also carrying a little bit of cash is a good idea. Most places will take cards, but you want to have a little bit of cash if you need it. Cool. Let's talk about Twin Lakes. And this one is one of my absolute favorites. And if I were to send ahead a resupply box, this is the place I would send it. I want to talk to you about why I would send it here. First of all, it's a great spot to send it because if you get a little bit of a resupply in Breckenridge all the way to Twin Lakes, then you're talking about 65, 70 miles. Most people will be able to do that in 4 days. And then Twin Lakes, the general store, doesn't have a lot of stuff for resupply for like a full deal. They will have things like butane fuel. You'll be able to resupply on that. They will have some things that you can get. It'll probably be a little more expensive. But the Twin Lakes General Store, folks are terrific. They deserve our support. They've been really great to hikers in the past. And so even if you just stop in and get an ice cream or sit outside, whatever you're going to do, the Twin Lakes General Store is a great one for you to send your resupply. There isn't much lodging there. There's a little bit. There's not much lodging there in Twin Lakes, but it is worth stopping in Twin Lakes because it's so close to the trail. It's great for grabbing a lunch. What I'll also say about Twin Lakes is, when you stop, make sure you're back on the trail by 6:30 or 7 o'clock at night, because you'll have to walk all the way around the lake or one of the lakes. And it's not hard to walk around the lake, but you have to be on the other side of the lake in order to legally camp. So you want to make sure you have time to make that 4-mile trek around the lake to where you can legally camp at the end of it. Again, we're trying to be good stewards of the trail and trying to make sure people in these towns are being respected for sharing their space with us. So Twin Lakes, absolutely terrific. Well worth it. Hard to get a place to stay there. If you do need one, still ask. You might run into a possibility of getting them. But that's ultimately where you have to make your decision about going east and west. So for the next few sections, we're going to have a little bit of that clumsy, awkward, here's what east looks like, here's what west looks like. But no going in that if I were to hike this again, and I think I'm going to sometime soon, maybe even this year. But I'm going west every single time. So west is just absolutely stunning. If you go east, there are some arguments for it, namely that going to the east is the classic route, but the west is absolutely stunning. And I want to point out there as well, Mad Hippie's Life, sending stuff to the general store, Twin Lakes General Store, keep it small. And that's actually really good advice, even if you think you need more stuff, because it is really easy to get into Buena Vista. Even if you're going west, it's all pretty straightforward. So let's talk a little bit about this one. Let's start first with that name, Buena Vista. The locals say Buena Vista. I know that it's not proper Spanish. I know that this is probably just grating on some people's ears, but Buena Vista is a little town. It's a great stop for a lot of folks. There aren't many lodging options, but there is a shower facility in downtown, a public shower. So if you just want to stop in and get cleaned up and get some pizza, then there's a good chance that you can do that there. And then also, there's a great store there called the Trailhead, which has good affordable gear. So if you need to fix something, if something isn't working out for you, the Trailhead is a great spot to stop. And then making your way back up. So if you're at the Avalanche Trailhead, which, side note, if you're doing the loop, I encourage people to start at the Avalanche Trailhead because it is down a paved road right outside of Buena Vista. It's got a great parking lot, and then it also gives you the most time at lower elevations before putting you up above tree line of any of the starting points. Now, Buena Vista, it's 9.5 miles from the Avalanche Trailhead, but it is a paved road, and there are people who are going past the Avalanche Trailhead to go up to the Cottonwood Pass. So it's all on the same road. So when you're at Cottonwood Pass or at the Avalanche Trailhead, you're about 40 miles outside of Twin Lakes, give or take. Very easy to catch a hitch or just walk it. There are some spots if you're walking where the road gets windy toward the end, so please be careful should you choose to do that. It's a great spot to have a shuttler pick you up. I had a shuttler pick me up last year there, Katie Cat's Cash Cab out of Leadville. And as Kirk points out, the shower and laundry is at the laundry, or the showers in the laundromat in the back of Buena Vista. And then Kate, for Buena Vista, this is actually both east or west. The difference is it's going to be the same road, but it's closer on the east, obviously. But it's really easy. Now, if you go from Cottonwood Pass, it's very, very easy to catch a hitch because what happens is all of the tourists go drive up to the Cottonwood Pass, and then they stand around and look at everything. And then if you just talk to them, they're going back to Buena Vista. So it's very easy to catch a hitch there. Actually, my now wife, my then fiance, she took hitchhikers back to town from there. And Billy asked a great question here. I want to show this one. How many more days do you think it would add to a typical person's overall hike to walk to resupplies? That's a great question. I would say probably 3. And the reason that I would say 3 is that it's really easy to figure out a couple of the resupplies where you're right on trail. So it's not as much as you would think. It's pretty doable because you've got that Leadville, or you've got the Breckenridge stop, which is shuttleable. And then the next one would be, you could send ahead resupplies to a couple of these spots and they're all right on trail. So it's pretty doable. I think it wouldn't necessarily add a ton. What I can say as well is that it's likely that a lot of people end up getting comfortable hitchhiking. It's sort of like with the food. There's certain things we won't eat, and then we get out on trail and we decide that we will eat it. But all that being said, I know people who have been able to do this way. Check out my video on hitchless resupply, and I think you'd find it really helpful because I think you'll find lots of ways to be able to get those resupplies without a whole lot of headache and added time to your trip. Now, if you go east, this one, shout out there to Kate. If you're going east, Mount Princeton Hot Springs is right on the trail. This is a great stop for setting out in the sun. It's a really great one for having people come to meet you. And if you have somebody who's coming to meet you, say you have a partner coming to meet you, or you want your parents to come out, just have them get a room for 3 or 4 nights. And then it's really easy to meet them there. It's a good stop. It's in a section that's pretty low in elevation, pretty sun exposed, so it can be kind of hot. It's a great one to sit. They've got a kind of courtyard there where you can sit and have an ice cream and a cold drink and wait before you head off into the more exposed area. And there's a pretty good road walk down to the Mount Princeton Hot Springs, and then a pretty good road walk out of there. So you want to make sure that you're pretty well suited for, or set by way of hydration before you leave the Mount Princeton Hot Springs. But they do take resupply, and it's a good one, especially if you are in Billy's boat where you don't necessarily want to do a lot of hitching. Mount Princeton Hot Springs is a good one, especially because if you get that resupply in Leadville, then you have 60 or 70 miles until you make your way over there. Now, Monarch Spur Campground is about a mile off the trail. It's on Highway 50. Highway 50 does cross the east and west both cross US Highway 50. And so that's a pretty easy one to send a resupply to. They've been really good to hikers. It's much easier if you're on the east. I don't believe the Butterfly House collects resupply boxes, and I'm not sure that I would necessarily send one over there anyway. But just know that that's the case, that you can send it to the Monarch Spur Campground. And sometimes they have a spot where you can set up your tent for the night. It is certainly possible as well for the Monarch Spur Campground. That one's going to be about, I want to say that's about 270 miles down trail, give or take. And they've got, they sometimes have those campsites, but sometimes they don't. So if you want a campsite there, show up early. Now, if you're going west, if you made that very wise decision to go west, then there's the Monarch Crest store. And this one is tough. Remember, I said earlier that there are some places that every year the policy seems to change. And I've heard both ways this year that they're either going to take resupply or they're not going to take resupply. Because of that, I don't recommend counting on them unless you call and confirm with them. But I would recommend stopping and having lunch there because they have a little like cafe kind of thing with hot dogs and nachos, that kind of thing. They don't have much hiker food. They do have like ramen noodles, but that's kind of the limit of it. But the Monarch Crest store is really good for waiting out storms if you get there later in the day, or getting rehydrated if you're getting ready to head out, because from there you're going to stay above tree line almost all the way to Marshall Pass, which is you're talking about 9 miles or so without a lot of tree line. And so it's a good one for waiting out storms should you run into a little bit of trouble at any point throughout that. But the Monarch Crest store, they have been good to hikers. I think they're pretty patient with us, and they're good about making sure that we have a spot to put down our packs. So certainly support them. I think they're good people who are trying hard. I don't know that they necessarily know how to help hikers quite the way that we would like them to, but I think that they are welcoming. So certainly support them. And it's a good place to buy a postcard, fill it out, and send it home if you're missing family. It's also good for kind of taking care of that. Now, from the same spot, basically the parking lot there at the Monarch Crest, or when you come out to the road, you can hitch into Salida or Poncha Springs, or if you've been coordinating with Trail Angels or Shuttlers, this is a really great stop. Now, Salida, full disclosure, is absolutely one of my favorite trail towns. They took one of the downtown areas, one of the downtown streets, I believe it's E Street or F Street, and they blocked it off during COVID. And now it's just a walking mall, and they decided they were just going to leave it that way. So Salida is a great town. They have a hostel there that's really great. They've got affordable lodging, generally speaking. They've got a laundromat, which is great. They've got a whole bunch of grocery stores, multiple grocery stores and bakeries, all sorts of stuff. I certainly recommend Salida or Poncha Springs. Poncha Springs is on the way. It's a little less glitzy, but there are some cool things there. There's a clothing maker there that I forget the name of it. If somebody remembers who that small clothing maker is, let us know. But I recommend a stop in Salida, especially if you went east or west. If you went east, chances are good you're going to be a little bit sunbaked and a little bit hot and tired. And if you went west, chances are good you are probably tired of hiding from a little bit of rainstorms in the afternoon. But still, go west, everybody. Right. Yep. And then Mad Hippie's there. Natural Grocers is there. Great for vegetarian and vegan options. I think this is a really great stop for a lot of folks. Salida is a terrific town. And as Details points out there, they have ice cream and pizza. It's phenomenal. It's worth a zero. And I think that would be a great place to stop for that. It's also great for getting back in touch with family, or if you need to kind of boost your morale, it's a great spot. They have Luna Pizza, I believe, is a great spot for that pizza there in Salida. Another good one. Now, here's the great debate, and I hope the comment boards go bananas over it. Most people have to decide between stopping in Creed or pushing forward. It's about a 16-mile difference. So Creed is about 350 miles down the trail, and then Lake City is or 340, apologies, and then Lake City is at 357 off the trail. They're both about equally difficult to reach. Creed is a cool mining town. It's got a lot of great stuff. I've stopped there, but I'm not on the hike. But I've stopped there after hikes, and so took a couple of days detour and checked it out. It's terrific. It's a great little town. I personally choose Lake City, and I'm going to mention why that is in just a moment. But let's talk a little bit about this. You can get in there. You can send a resupply, especially if you know where you're going to stay for the night. It's a little tougher with lodging, and what happens is you basically will climb up San Luis Pass, and you'll keep hiking. You'll be above tree line. It's one of the most beautiful segments. It's incredible. And then you'll get to the saddle, and you'll either have to go straight up the side of this giant mountain. It's 1,000 feet in a mile, so it's one of the toughest climbs. I believe it's the 5th hardest climb. Or you make a left, and you go down into Creek. You'll go down about 1.2 miles down the trail, and then you'll come to a Jeep road that's pretty rocky. And then you keep going down from there, and 2 miles past the Jeep road, you'll start seeing folks who are on those side-by-sides, and they are really great to hikers, generally speaking. So even though they're not in a car, you can still stick out your thumb, and then you can make your way down there. You can also talk to a couple. There's some shuttlers that'll get you up the trail. I believe the going rate is about $20 to get you up the road to the Jeep road, or $40 to take you up the Jeep road that's really rocky, the rockier part. I talked to Details from Girl Plus Dog Adventures. She said she thinks it's very well worth it to go up spend the $20 and get up those last 2 miles, because it's a really it's a tougher one. I also want to point out there, she's mentioned that they have a full grocery store and they have a gear shop. And so Details, fill us in a little bit if you have a chance, but there were some water filter issues that you ran into on your through hike. And so I think you took care of that at San Juan Sports, and hopefully that's the case. Now let's talk a little bit about the other option, and that is Lake City here. Lake City is 17 miles past. It's just past Snow Mesa, and you're going to get to Spring Creek Pass. It's a paved road. I believe it's US Highway 149, and you can hitch your way down, or as Matt Hippies points out, the Ravens Rest Hostel there often runs a free shuttle at 12:30 in the afternoon if you're there. This is something that's pretty common. It's been going for years. I can't guarantee that you're going to be able to make your way down via the shuttle, but it is really easy to catch a hitch, because anybody on that road is going to Lake City, and anybody going to Lake City is an outdoorsy person. Lake City does have the hostel. If you're going to stay at the Ravens Rest, you need to be there very early, because it's very small and it fills up quickly. They do have a grocery store. It's a great little town. And the reason I personally prefer it to Creed is nothing against Creed. It's that if I wait until Lake City to get that resupply at mile 357, then I don't have to make that giant climb out of Creed with a full pack of all my food. So what I recommend is, if you go to Creed, also go to Lake City. You can probably make up the time just by the merit of the fact that your pack will be so much lighter, because if you skip Lake City, your next option isn't until 60 miles down the trail until you get to Mullis Creek or Mullis Pass. And so I think there's a really good argument to be made for going to both or just Lake City. Both are terrific, though. And if you get to Lake City on Sunday, there is a church there that does a hiker dinner for free. So I believe it's Sunday at 4:00, and they will give you free food and take care of you. I think they're pretty terrific there. And as Details points out, Creed does have dog friendly hotels. The Ravens Rest has been dog friendly in the past as a hostel, but overall, it's a lot easier to go to Lake City or to Creed with a dog as well. There we go. Just kind of checking up on those comments there. All right, let's talk. We've got just a couple more. I appreciate your patience, everybody. I'm really grateful that you're here. Make sure, if you get a chance, to click that like and subscribe button. It really does help out. And I'm really grateful for each of you. And so before we get into talking about Mullis Pass and Silverton, I want to let you know that if you find me on Instagram at Backcountry Champion, send me a message and say, hey, Snackbox, hit me up with one of those cool Outside Comfort Zone stickers. I got to show you this because I'm super amped about it. Many of you have one of these guys here. This is the Outside Comfort Zone. This is old school. We're talking hipster style. This is the way I started the game. And then I met somebody who was much more helpful to who I am as a YouTuber. And she created just this dynamite Outside Comfort Zone logo for me. You'll see it up in the top corner right here. I think this is terrific. Even if I've already sent you an Outside Comfort Zone sticker, send me a message on Instagram. Say, hey, Snackbox, I want a new one. And I will get it in the mail to you tomorrow. It's totally free. It's just my way of saying thank you all for being so great to me and being part of this community. So I'm really grateful for each and every one of you here. And so I'm just, let me just try to hold it together here for you all. I'm so grateful. A little bit clamped. All right. So Mullis Creek Campground. This one is, this is right when it's right off trail, right at the end of the segment. What is that segment? 24. And so you climb and climb and climb. You basically come down the Elk Creek drainage. If you know anything about it, you will shoot down. It's the biggest descent on the whole trail. You get to the bottom to the Animas River, you'll cross a train track, and then you'll climb back up, and then you'll get to the Mullis Creek Campground. It is basically on the trail. There's a side trail to it. It is great for showers. It's great for resupply. You can send a box there, especially if you're trying to do this hitch list. That's a must, because at that point you'll need it. And then you can get a shower there. You don't have to go into Silverton. While you're showering, you can charge up your phones, that kind of thing. And so Mullis Creek Campground is pretty good. Now, if you get a campsite there, it's also worth knowing that the ground is really hard to get a stake in. I'm talking like you'll bend your stakes. And so if you are trying to camp there, it's probably best if you have a freestanding tent. But the Mullis Pass Campground is also great for just stopping in and getting ice cream and a cold drink before you head off into the San Juans, unless of course you head down into Silverton. Now, Silverton is basically a 6-mile hitch. It's pretty easy to hitch down there because, again, when you get to that paved road, everybody who's passing is heading down to Silverton. And so when you get to that road and you dip down into Silverton, here's what you need to know. It is a terrific little mining town, but it is super expensive to get a hotel room. So you need to have that budgeted. And when I went there, the least expensive hotel room I had was maybe $170. If you get there earlier, you'll have a few more options. It'll be certainly possible. This is a great stop for a lot of different reasons, especially if you're starting 1st of July, because you're going to be hitting some rainstorms almost certainly. And so stopping down there in Silverton is a really great option for you if you need to dry clothes. I needed to go there and buy some dry socks and take a day off. It's a really great one. And so it's also, as Matt Hippie points out, they've got there were a bunch of blowdowns in Elk Creek a couple of years ago. So in 2020, when I hiked, it was miserable, like tons of avalanche fields, but the Colorado Trail Foundation did a great job of clearing that out. And so now you're going to be in a lot better shape, and you're going to head in, it's just going to be better. You can, if you are doing this as like a bucket list adventure, you can flag down the train to Silverton, the narrow gauge train. And I believe it's not cheap. I believe it's somewhere in the ballpark of like $200, right? And so if you're doing the bucket list trip, take the train into Silverton, especially if you're trying to get there for whatever reason, and you can get there, but it's just expensive, but it's worth it because it's kind of historic. So if you can, then that's a really great way to get into town and come back to the trail. Kate, there, you mentioned you can get, it's the Mullis Creek Campground has a few things. They have a hiker box, which is good to know about. So if you're going later in the season, you can probably resupply on stuff other people sent and didn't take with them. And you can go to the store and get things like M&Ms and ice cream and that kind of thing. I wouldn't count on it for a full resupply, but you could certainly make do. It's also worth knowing that if you get there and you just talk to people who are stopping in at the store, that's another great way to kind of make your way down to Silverton and get that ride. It's also worth thinking about for a lot of people. If you need a couple of days, you can take the same road the other direction to Durango, and it's just about as easy to catch a hitch the 30 or 40 miles to Durango from Mullis Pass if you need a cheaper option for a hotel and you need to get some stuff and get gear, especially gear. So if you have, say, a flat air pad or your tent's collapsed or whatever, you're probably going to need to go into Durango. That's certainly a possibility as well. All right. I think ultimately, though, here's the deal. Once you leave Silverton, you've got about 70 miles, and it's going to be very tough for you to dip out. But at that point, you are heading into some of the most beautiful parts of the Colorado Trail. And ironically, even though you're heading into the San Juans, that is some of the better hiking by way of the miles you're going to be able to make for a lot of different reasons. One is the trail is just incredible heading through the San Juans. Second reason there is that you are going to be the strongest you've been since leaving town in Denver, however long ago you left. And so don't let that make you nervous. Know that you're going to make a lot of time through the San Juan. So actually take your time. I would allow a couple extra days if you can, not because you're going to need them, but because the San Juans are just so breathtaking and stunning. I think those would really be really terrific. And as Billy Randall points out, the Chicago Basin is just an incredible spot of the trail. And so that'd be a great sort of side hike. And I also want to point out there what Rolf said, that paying for a camp at Mullis Campground is not necessarily the best move, especially because if you keep going a little south, you're going to get to Little Mullis Lake. There's some beautiful camping, and it's not hard to reach. It's actually pretty level. I think you're only going to gain an elevation of 100, 200 feet. And so I would only stay at the Mullis Creek Campground if I had a reservation early and I knew that I was going to make full use of the showers, maybe twice, and maybe I was going to try to take the day, go through there. But as Matt Hippies points out there, segments 20 through 27 are absolutely some of the most stunning of the entire Colorado Trail. So absolutely recommend it. This is also one of those questions a lot of people will say, like, hey, what should I do for a great 1 week trip on the Colorado Trail? I can't make it out. And I would say a couple of different options, but certainly going from Silverton down to Durango is a great option for a million different reasons. But absolutely would recommend that. And I would also recommend, if you don't have a reservation at Mullis Creek, just push on a mile or two and you're going to find some really stellar campgrounds, or campsites rather, that are just down the trail from there. I want to talk for just 1 minute. I've got just a couple more, so I appreciate y'all hanging in with me. If you have questions that I haven't covered yet, feel free to send this out. And I'm hoping to do more of these live chats, and have a couple of cool guests. I think the next one will be in a couple of weeks. We're going to talk about hiking as a woman on the Colorado Trail. Not me, obviously. I'm just going to ask questions. But I've got a couple of thru hikers who are women who have hiked the trail, and I want to talk more at length about what that experience is like. So stay tuned for that. And I want us to talk a little bit here. One of the questions that I did get earlier about this one specifically was about food storage options. And as you all know, there are a lot of different options. You can still do the counterbalanced hang with an old school bag. You can take the Ursack with the OpSack, which will protect the smells. You can carry a bear canister. Those are options. Now, here's what I would say. Couple of different things. I have some hard opinions about it. I'll save those. I like, if I'm brand new to the trail, I do like a bear canister because of the added security, not because of bears. You're not going to see many bears most likely on the trail, but I like it because it takes one variable out of the equation. It is 2 pounds, 2.5 pounds, depending on the weight, but it doubles as a seat, and you can put your gear in it as you start to shrink your pack. So as you eat up the food, you can consolidate a little bit. But it's a great option for you if you're a little bit nervous about this. And specifically, not because of the bears, it's great because of rodents, because you have marmots, you've got pikas, you've got mice who are going to try to get your food. And so having that bear canister can be really helpful. Now, you can also take that Ursack and the OpSack. And what I know about this is a little more limited, but what I was told by a park ranger in Sequoia National Park a couple of years ago is that the problem with the Ursack is that if a bear does come in and grab it and bite it, then they still taste the food. So they're still becoming acclimated to people, even if they don't get your specific meal. So personally, I opt for not using an Ursack, or if I was going to use an Ursack, I would hang it when I'm hanging it. But that's me personally. You all can make your own decisions, and I'm not going to judge you, and hopefully you're not judging other people, as long as we're doing our absolute best to take care of this trail. What I don't want to have happen is for bears to become so prevalent that it's like the John Muir Trail where we have to carry bear canisters. So I want you to all be really diligent and vigilant about it, because we may only hike this once, but if future generations are going to go out and really appreciate this, we need to take care of those bears and keep them safe from us. That's ultimately it. I don't believe bears are a threat to us, but we are certainly a threat to bears in this situation. So make sure you're counterbalancing that food. I don't recommend sleeping with your food in your tent for pretty obvious reasons. Although what I will say is I have seen people do it, especially when they get to those higher elevations. I believe Black Bear Range goes up to like 9,600 feet. So I think you're still in that point where you're more likely to end up with a mouse in your tent than anything, but nobody wants a mouse chewing through your really expensive tent at that point. So I do recommend leaving that elsewhere personally, but again, you're going to have to make a lot of these decisions on your own. But if you have food storage questions, or if you need to borrow a bear canister, then let me know. I can tell you that I took a bear canister for a long time until I felt really safe with it. And Billy, you pointed out right there, the best thing we can do for bears is keep them afraid of us and let them know that we're not a source of food or snacks. And that's a really important point there too. Now, last couple of things, and then we're going to peace out for tonight. First of all, here, I want to talk to you a little bit about supporting the Colorado Trail Foundation. And I think this is just really important. If you can't go on a thru hike, that doesn't necessarily mean you can't help out, right? And so there are a lot of different things you can do. You can join their trail crews, go out and help take care of the trails. You can make donations if you are in a position to do that, although that's not always the case for people, and it certainly wasn't the case for me for a long, long time in my life. But you can also do things like buy your data book from them if you can afford that. So even if you can't afford to make a donation, buying your data book, buying your guidebook. They've got a really great buff that you can buy from them, and they set really affordable prices, so that's really good. But just making sure that we're trying to be good stewards and supporting the trail. I've been fortunate in my lifetime to be a member of a lot of different hiking communities, and the Colorado Trail Foundation is hands down the best run. When you're watching that Facebook group, if you ask a question and you see Bill Manning chime in, he's the director of the Colorado Trail Foundation, and to have that kind of personalized attention is it's unbelievable. It's second to none. And so do your best to take care of supporting the trail and supporting the foundation. Some of the other things you can do to support the trail when you're hiking is make sure you do things like leave no trace, right? So carrying out your toilet paper, carrying out, making sure, because they have to send people to clean up your toilet paper, even if you bury it, animals will dig it up. So carrying out your toilet paper. As Robert on Trail points out, the firehouse at the end of segment 2, I'd also take a little bit of money and put a little bit of money. They have a donation box just to help pay for that water. I think that would be a really, really great thing for us if we can make sure that the firemen know that firefighters, not firemen, firefighters are well taken care of from there. And then and Billy asked a question about when you should buy the data book. I believe the 8th edition is going to stay this way. So it's as Details points out, it was just recently updated, and so you can go ahead and buy it and start looking through it right now. It's ready to go, and it won't get updated for a little while. Kate, that's a great question. That's Kate asked about inflatable or foam pad. This one is just about how certain you are that you're going to have a good ground sheet to make sure that it's not going to get popped. Or another way to think about it is with if you can afford an inflatable pad, are you okay sleeping on the ground a night or two if it does get a leak and you have to wake up? Typically what happens is you won't wake up on the ground and be done and have to sleep on the ground for a few days. What's more likely to happen is you're going to get a slow leak and have to wake up a couple of nights and reinflate your air mattress to get through the night. But that's typically enough to get people through to a town where they're going to be able to buy a new pad. And also a foam pad is great for budget. And so a foam pad you can get for $20. The inflatable pads start at about $60 or $70, and really about $80 to $100 to get one that you know is going to be great. Melinda has a great point too for women hikers. The Kula cloth is it's an antimicrobial cloth that women can use for toilet for wiping after peeing. Basically, there's no delicate way to say it, but Kula cloths are terrific. They're a really great option, and a lot of people have them out on the trail. They're not terribly expensive. If Melinda, if you or Details, if you know how much they are, if you could post that, those would be really great. They're kind of a sign that if you're a woman hiker, it's a sign that you're really into hiking. And so it's a good one to have. And it's a great little company too. It's a small business. So it'd be a good one for everybody to support as you do so. All right. So I think that about covers it, everybody. Once again, this is Snackbox or Jared. Snackbox at Outside Comfort Zone. I appreciate y'all being here. If you have a chance, please do click that like and subscribe button. The subscribe button really helps us get word out. And then I'd also point out a couple of different channels that are worth watching. Check out Off Grid. He's been in the chat here. He's terrific, out of California. Check out Girl Plus Dog Adventures. This is Girl Plus Dog Adventures just posted her last video of the 28 segments, hiking it with Remy, her dog. Really terrific. You might be able to hear Remy in the background there. He's barking because he hears my name. And then also check out Mad Hippie's Life. And I mentioned them at the top of the hour there. Their videos are absolutely stunning as well. So I would say of all the channels I've just mentioned, especially the Colorado Trail videos, they did just phenomenal videos, and they will get you excited about this hiking season. So grateful for each and every one of you. I think you're all terrific, and I'm really grateful that you all showed up for this. If you have questions, feel free to shoot them over. I'll do my best to answer them, and I hope you're getting excited about the trail. Last thing here, the last Saturday of the month at 4 o'clock at Races Brewing. Let me type that in here so we can Races Brewing there in Denver. We're going to have a meetup. It's at 4 o'clock, the last Saturday of the month. I believe that's the 27th. I should have this already queued up. I had all the towns all set up. If you're interested in coming out to a meetup, please do show up to Races Brewing. We're going to have a great meetup. get to meet you all. Again, the trail itself is about the community. And so this is a great time for us to start meeting up. So thank you all again. Grateful for everybody. I think that's about it. This is Snack Box out. Take care, everybody.